No. And I certainly didn't expect to be here with a big crowd like this ever, but I mean, this is how things can happen. And when I found, I told this in the talk, but I'm going to say a little bit about this. I found this book with old newspaper articles about the astronaut training near where I grew up. And when I saw this, I thought right away, I mean, it's ridiculous that this thing happened here and no one is like doing anything with it. I mean, because it's such a big thing to go to the moon and to have, for us, a tiny part is big. I mean, if you have a small part of something big, you have something big. That's the thing. And maybe I wouldn't have done anything more with it, but it just happened that my father brought me this gift by coincidence the same day, and then I thought, okay, I have to do something with this. And when I started finding pictures of the astronaut training, and just less than a month ago, I found a whole batch of pictures from one of the photographers who had passed away, and they had just recently been scanned, and they were actually, less than a month ago, I found some of the best pictures I have now from this whole thing, and I've been doing this for 10 or 12 years. But I posted some of the first pictures I got on Facebook, and there's a group called Space Hipsters, and it has a lot of people who are enthusiastic about space. There's a lot of activity in that group these days because of Artemis, which is launching in 2 days. And Rick Armstrong, who is Neil Armstrong's older son, or a man named Rick Armstrong, started commenting on the pictures, and I was thinking, is he related to Neil Armstrong somehow? And of course he was his son. And that's sort of, from that point it started rolling. But I didn't realize the importance of the training they did until they told me. I mean, I was going to make this museum, and I would have made it sound big because it was big for us, but having them say how important it was meant a lot to me and my community. Yes?
My friend and I live in Surrey, and just wanted to tell you that the part of the film, the fire sound, was filmed at our local rugby club. Yeah, would you believe? When you,
which bit was it, Julia? When they're all together drinking in the bar, that's our local rugby club.
yes, that's where it was filmed.
She was saying some of you may have seen this film that was shot in Húsavík, and that's one of the opportunities that we have grabbed and done something with. And some of the most memorable scenes happen in a pub that's supposed to be in Húsavík, but there wasn't any place in Húsavík big enough for that, so they filmed it in her local pub, basically. That's cool. You have to give me that touch. I want to go. So many people ask me, where is this pub? And it's okay. Okay. That's weird. Where is it?
In Surrey.
My question was, how much of the movie Eurovision was actually filmed in Iceland, specifically Húsavík, and have any of the cast come back to visit?
Yes, so in Húsavík, they filmed all the scenes that happen outdoors, basically. Everything that happens inside is filmed in a studio or in this pub, that's your pub. And, one of the things I noticed, because I've never seen the behind the scenes of a Hollywood movie made in the making, and I enjoyed because many of the houses that are in the film, and then they are inside the house, so I know what it actually looks on the inside, and they took so much detail to make all the windows in the right place, and it looks like it could be inside these houses. So they were very attentive to details that no one except a few people in Húsavík wouldn't even notice. So it felt kind of them to do it so properly.
Hi, my wife and I did an 8-day land tour of Iceland before we got on the cruise, and we had 4 nights in Reykjavik to see other things. I tried to get to Húsavík from Reykjavik, couldn't do it, unless I rented a car, but didn't really want to do that. And when I got on on the ship, before I knew you were there, I went to excursions to see if we could travel from Orly to Husavik, and you were on your own. So I would have been at your place, not knowing you were there, but there was no way to get there, no practical way to get there. An opportunity for you to work with the cruise line.
Yeah, next time, if there is a next time, I'm definitely going to make sure that they have a bus to Husavik. Okay, all the way back there.
I get the blue bus from the movie.
Yes. It would be, everyone noticed that, of course, everyone will know.
When people visit you in Husavik, what places do you recommend to stay, whether hotel or Airbnb?
Okay, I'm a little biased when it comes to a place to stay because me and my father and our family, we actually run a hotel. Husavik has 2 hotels. We have a small one. We have 20 rooms, so it's a small, cozy hotel. And then there is one big, there's a chain of hotels all around Iceland, and they have 100 rooms in Husavik. So there are 120 hotel rooms in town. And then there are also a few Airbnbs and guest houses and bed and breakfasts. So there is, well, off-season there is plenty of places to stay. If you want to come during summer, it's good to book maybe 2 or 3 months in advance. But when you come to Husavik, so Husavik sits right on the north coast. We've been to Akureyri, as you know, and we are a little bit to the east of Akureyri on the island. And from Husavik, there is this road, and it's been in the making. It started as an idea 20 some years ago, and it just opened 2 years ago, and it's called the Diamond Circle, and it takes you from Husavik to a place called Ásbyrgi, and it's a canyon. And this canyon, if you ask me how it was formed, I will tell you that there was a volcanic eruption under a glacier, a lot of water melted, and it carved out this canyon. If you ask my dad, he will tell you that the horse of the god Sleipnir, horse of the god Odin, the horse of Sleipnir was riding. He has 8 legs and he can fly, and he set his foot down because this canyon is shaped like a horseshoe. So that's the old story of the canyon. So you drive from Husavik to this canyon. It's very beautiful in there. Then you drive for another 20 minutes and you get to a waterfall called Dettifoss. And that waterfall is the most powerful waterfall in all of Europe. It's not the big, not the widest or not the tallest, but it has the most water of any waterfall that you will find in the European continent. And I've been there many, many times with people, and but the most powerful description I ever got of this waterfall was from a blind person who went there and said that just by standing there, feeling the vibration under his feet, feeling the moist air hit his face, and the sound, completely sensed the waterfall. And maybe in a more powerful way than I will ever do, because I guess these senses are more active when you're missing the one you're on front. From there, you go to a lake called Miva, and I think some of you may have been there, to Lake Miva. Yeah? And that lake in itself has a ring around it, and there are 10 or 15 highly interesting places there. You will find so many different types of rock formations. You have a place called Dimmuborgir, which means dark city, and it's pillars of lava rock, and they make all sorts of interesting shapes, and one of them looks like a church. And my sister got married in front of that rock. And we have a long red carpet in our hotel, and we rolled it up and we placed it on the lava so she could get married there. And this lake also has 97, I think, species of birds. So if you love birds, it's the right place to be. And from there, you drive to one more waterfall called Goðafoss, and that's, some of you went there. Yeah. And you know the story of Goðafoss. When that I've been telling this story, his father actually wrote the book. He wrote his doctoral thesis about when Iceland became a Christian nation, because we were pagan and we had the old Norse gods. In the year 1000, there was a lot of push for Iceland to become Christian, and there was a heated argument. And we have in Iceland, in Þingvellir, I know some of you may have been to the National Park of Þingvellir in Reykjavik. That was the seat of the parliament back in the day. And it had a session once a year. And in many of the world's political system, you have a speaker of the house. And the reason it's called the speaker, that actually comes from the Icelandic tradition, because at the start of every session of the parliament, the speaker comes and speaks the whole law of the country. But of course, it was much shorter than it is today. Today, 1 year would not last to speak the whole law of Iceland, I guess. But there was a decision made that the speaker would decide if Iceland would be a Christian or stick to the old Norse gods. And this speaker lived near this waterfall, which is about 45 minutes from Húsavík, and went into his camp, stayed there for 24 hours, and came out with the decision: Iceland shall be a Christian nation, but anyone who wants is free in the privacy of their own home to pray the old gods if they tell no one about it. So the transition from the pagan gods to Christianity was remarkable in Iceland because there was not a single drop of blood shed. And this is uncommon when a whole country changes its religion. And that's where he lived. So when he came back from the session of the parliament, he threw the statues of the old gods into the waterfall. And that's why it's called Goðafoss, waterfall of the gods. And on this road there are 10 or 15 other smaller attractions, but these are sort of the highlights. So this, I would definitely recommend you visit in town of Húsavík, because we used to be based around fishing, but now we based them around whale watching. And the bay has, I don't even know how many different types of whale there is now, but they're always walking new and new types of whales here. And there seems to be a lot for them to eat in this bay, so there's always more and more whales. And the blue whale, which is the biggest mammal ever known to have lived on Earth. They are even much bigger than dinosaurs. If you get the chance to visit a museum that has a blue whale skeleton, you will see just how big this animal is. And it's living on this Earth. It could be right under this boat right now, who knows? And it's remarkable that the biggest animal that has ever lived on Earth lives with us on this Earth now.
You forgot to give us the name of your hotel.
It's called Húsavík Cape Hotel. It sits on the cape above the harbor, so you have a good view of the boats and everything. Welcome.
I just wanted to say thank you for both the lectures about the moon and also the wonderful lecture about almost the Oscar. And what was most important to me and was the feeling that I got about you, your culture, and the way you presented these talks so genuinely, so loving, so acceptable and natural, with fun and laughter, and getting the town and the people involved to create all that, even with fireworks. I thought the presentation and everything was wonderful.
Thank you very much. Oh, there's something going on right now.
Did you hear what they were saying?
Okay, guys, free whale
Might be a
watching.
whale. Some whales out there.
So you don't need to come to
He's
Húsavík
speaking
alone.
about whales and whale watching, and then
Yeah,
the whale watching started.
he has great friends.
He needs to do the commentary now.
Oh no, he'll say, "Oh, that's Fred. He's from our town, and that's Bob. I don't know who that one is over there." we know the whales by name.
Yes, yes. That's unbelievable.
Yes, that was. There could be a big blue whale right under this ship. Wait a minute, there's a whale.
He just said that there might be a movie, and
Yes.
then the movie came up. So, I am going. Now I am going. Yes, yes.
You can just see the grey. See the grey. Come on. It's right over here.
Oh, right there.
There's one there as well, David.
100 feet off the shore.
And I,
Right there, coming up again.
Yeah.
That looks like a dolphin.
I think that's a dolphin, yeah.
Yeah, the, out there further, there's a big one. Yeah, there's a whale, I think, way out there. Yep, over there. And right here. Dolphins.
Poor his talk just got completely taken over by, we get so excited about a whale. Did you see him right? No, his dad is the expert dolphin. Yeah.
but I find it unbelievable. He is speaking about whales.
And that's what I
And they all come
said.
back.
That's what I said. The only reason we're seeing them is because he's talking about it. It's like a magic.
But he kept coming. So there's a bunch of spouts right there.
Yeah, I see that.
But there was also a huge, there was a huge.
Let me ask you, are dolphins, do dolphins
Yeah.
come this far north
Yeah,
or are
we
those
are.
orcas?
Right.
Yes, I think
ahead of
they
them.
do. Yes, we have all kinds of.
The dolphins close.
Orcas, orcas which are a type of dolphin,
Yes,
but not the regular dolphins like you have in the Caribbean, they don't come here.
yes.
They didn't satisfy us.
They're just.
That was a distraction.
Yeah. Did you see anything?
We saw a couple of amazing whales.
That's the thing. Talk about inlet.
I can see it now. He's going to start by saying, as I was saying.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The gods are smiling on you.
Everything was orchestrated, of course, you know. This was an opportunity, and I'm glad someone saw it, and you all took this opportunity. So, yeah.
You referred to the Artemis program, and of course the first rocket going up in 2 days is unmanned, but after that there's a series of manned rockets going up to the moon. So have you had any contact with people that are planning to train the crews for these manned flights?
That would, of course, be a dream. We have welcomed quite a number of NASA scientists, no astronauts in training, or no active astronauts in training. We have only been welcoming old astronauts. But I keep good contact with the astronauts who I've befriended. I tell them every time there is a volcanic eruption in Iceland, so that means I send them email every few months about that. And we have had 2 eruptions in the last 1 year, and one is almost or likely to start in a few days. So we keep on good contact still, and one of the astronauts who I speak with is Harrison Smith. He was on Apollo 17, the last mission to the moon. He was actually supposed to be on Apollo 18. The scientific community had been pushing for NASA to send a real scientist to the moon, but then after Apollo 11, it was harder to get funding for these missions. The interest went down very quick. And it's remarkable how fast people got bored with the moon. I don't know why that was. But they started to cancel missions. They had plans all the way for Apollo 20. They canceled 20 and 19 in the same cancellation, and then a few months later they canceled Apollo 18. So the scientists at NASA, they said, we are going to send our scientists to the moon, and they ended up bumping one guy off Apollo 17 so that they could fit Harrison Smith in there. And being a scientist, he is always looking at the moon in a practical way. And there are many reasons to go back to the moon. If we go back to the moon, we will want to stay for longer. On the moon, I showed you the picture called Earthrise, where the astronauts of Apollo 8 saw the Earth rising above the moon. But it's an illusion, because they were in the spacecraft. You are the Earth now, and this is the moon, and the spacecraft is coming up around, and then when I come like this, I see you rise, but it's actually me who is moving. And so when you stand on the surface of the moon, the Earth is always in the same location. It doesn't move at all. But this is the reason why we always see the same face of the moon when we see it. But we see it moving, and that's because we are moving. We are spinning around. And so if you're on the moon, you see the Earth, and it's always in the same place, but it's spinning around. And I guess that's pretty magical to see. On the moon, however, the sun rises say day 1, and then it sets on day 14, counting Earth days, meaning that month is moon. In Icelandic, month is mánuður, which means a month time, a moon time, basically. 1 month is the length of a whole day on the moon. And so you have 14 days while you're in the heat of the sun, and then your area has 14 days in the cold. And the difference, I don't know in Fahrenheit, but some of you may know Celsius. So it's plus 250 Celsius in the sunlight. This is how you would bake or burn a cake, I guess. And when you are on the cold side, it's minus 200. So in Celsius, it's 450 degrees difference between sunlight and sun. So that's a lot. So going to the moon back in the 60s, you needed to pick a time and you could only stay for a short time. Now, scientists look to the lava tubes on the moon, and there are so many of them because the moon had a lot of volcanism. And these tubes, they provide a natural shelter from radiation because the moon has it has a very low gravity, and that means it has a very low gravitational field that protects it from radiation, and of course no atmosphere. So going underground means that you have natural protection from radiation. You also have a better way of controlling the heat down there rather than on the surface. And most importantly, because going to the moon is all about the weight, you don't have to bring your structure. You can actually make a thing that you put inside this laboratory, which is much lighter than building a whole structure or a space station on the moon. And if this becomes reality at some point, then they will use Iceland for sure, because we have so many of these tubes. And we have seen a startup, and I've been working with them, trying to explore and map these tubes in Iceland and try to develop a concept for that. So this might be one way that Iceland works with the space program in the future. I mentioned Harrison Smith because he looks to the moon for all the power that's on the surface. Being without an atmosphere, all of the helium-3 from the sun goes all the way down to the surface, and this can provide enough energy. We don't have to build one power plant in the whole world if we find a way to move this energy from the moon to the Earth. So that's also another thing. Okay, any questions? Yes?
Thank you for your outstanding work and presentations. In looking back, do you think of missed opportunities or mistakes that could guide you for future work?
No, not really. But I mean, I get many ideas for some projects, and 99% of them never amount to anything. But the ones who do I've been lucky that they have turned into something interesting. But like when reaching out to people to come, I reached out to a lot of interesting people to come to Húsavík, and if, like for instance, I host this annual festival, I guess I send out 30, 40 emails every year to people who I want to bring in, and I'm lucky if I get 4 or 5 of them to actually come. But people who come to the festival, they don't know of everyone who could have been there. They just know, okay, oh, these interesting people are here. So if you send out enough emails, you will eventually get, you know. But I quickly forget. I think sometimes something passes by me and I notice it, but then I start to think about something else. So I don't keep a good record of, you know what I mean.
Do you have any CDs, DVDs available here or in your museum about your lectures on the space program and your communication and friendship with the astronauts?
No, not yet. Maybe I prepare something for next time, but thank you for asking. Okay, no.
I don't remember the name of the movie you talked about. Could you repeat it? Either yours?
Yeah, the movie is called Orlyson Song Contest, the story of Firesaga. And it's a comedy, it's a Will Ferrell comedy. He wrote the script, and his friend David Duckin directed the film. And it's a silly film, but they came to our town, and we didn't know how much of a role we would play. There have been films made in Iceland, and usually when they are set in space, and then it's not Iceland in the film, it's just they use it as a set. And sometimes they come and they make up a name for some town which doesn't exist, but they film it in a town. But in this case, they chose to have Húsavík as sort of a character in the film, and it got to be its own. It's called in the film. It's called Húsavík. So that was a unique opportunity for us to promote ourselves after COVID, because COVID was such a big hit for us, and this was the perfect. No place in the world, I have to say, got such a great opportunity to promote itself after COVID, like Hollywood brought to us. So it's, I mean, I've done many things that have not worked, I've done things that have worked, and I think success is a big, like it's both luck and hard work. And if you see, I mean, you need to keep your eyes open to see when there's luck on your horizons also. And that's what we did with this film, and it turned out very well for us. What was that? You just wanted to know the name of the film?
Yes.
It's called Eurovision Song Contest, the story of Fire Saga, and it's on Netflix, and since the Netflix movie, I think it will stay on there for quite a time, so you can get a chance to watch it. And we in Húsavík, we like to make fun of ourselves, so we were very happy that Hollywood chose to do that as well. It didn't hurt our feelings at all.
Repeat the name one more time.
Yeah, it's called Eurovision Song Contest, the story of Fire Saga. Will Ferrell always has a long, or often has a long name to his films.
Is it song?
Song Contest.
S-O-N-G.
S-O-N-G, yeah. Eurovision Song Contest, the story of Fire Saga.
The story of
Fire Saga.
Fire.
Will Ferrell movie.
Thank you. I was wondering if you've been contacted by, or whether you have contacted, national public television in the States, to present, actually for you to present all of this wonderful information about Iceland, particularly obviously the Apollo, the astronauts coming. It would be a wonderful program for public television to pick up.
Cool. We were visited a few years ago by the BBC in the UK, and they did a 10-minute radio documentary of the museum and the training of the astronauts. There was a small piece in National Geographic a few years ago, and now I'm talking about the training of the astronauts. This Oscar thing blew up in media all over the US, but that was a different story. That's something that comes and goes. The other one is something I want to work on for a long time, the story of the astronauts. So if you know someone in media, I would be happy to speak to them. But I can listen to all the programming of the NPR because they cut it down into podcasts, and I can listen to them back home, and they have wonderful programming.
We needed to see the movie on the big screen in the theater just to enhance it.
Yes, that would be nice. And also some people have asked me if there's a way to show the rocket launch in 2 days. And I'm going to try to work on that, because I want that to happen. I think there are so many people who would be interested, just so I have quite a lot of people. I guess it makes sense for them to show it somewhere. So I'll try to arrange that if I can. One more question here?
Another COVID-related, during the binge-watching sessions, we were all confined to our homes, we watched several different series that related to the Vikings. And I was hoping one of your presentations would be about the Vikings, but that might be something of interest in future cruises, that you could put together a story about. You know, I didn't realize that the Vikings were the start of Iceland, etc. So much older than what we're thinking about in the United States. So I'd just like to know more about the truth of what happened with the Vikings.
I heard an interesting thing here, which I hadn't thought about. We make a lot of jokes in Iceland. I don't know if you heard the captain this morning. He said people in Iceland say if they don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. And I was happy to hear him make this joke, because I made it up in the bridge that day. There is a joke in Iceland, and it goes something like this. Icelanders, they found America and then they lost it.
Yeah.
But I had never given it so much. I mean, I think a lot about the Vikings, and I feel privileged to be on this cruise, following in the path of the Vikings to Greenland and onward to Newfoundland. I mean, I've never done this route. I've never been to Greenland before, and I've never been to Newfoundland, and I feel honored to be a part of this trip that goes in this same route as the Vikings did back then. But what I heard from someone here on the cruise, and I've had so many interesting conversations that I don't remember who said this, was that maybe because the Vikings came to America, and there were other folks there, and they were so few, and the person who told me that there are skulls and you can see that they've been hit by arrows. So maybe they just, okay, let's get out of here. But this is, I know quite a lot of history of Vikings, mainly in my region, but I should look more into this, the history of Vikings in the US. I think it's a fascinating story, and I haven't seen this program, The Vikings, but I've heard a lot of good things about it, so maybe that's a starting point. Okay?
I'm just so impressed with your initiative, your creativity. I'm kind of curious as to what your schools are like and how many people are in Jerusalem. And I just think it's amazing. Your schools must promote something to generate you and your family.
Okay, well, our schools are funded by the government. There is no private school system in Iceland. So take this home with you. This is a knowledge for you guys. We invest heavily in education, and that's what you should do. You should invest heavily in education. I mean that brings more and more people with knowledge. It brings invention, and it builds a better society. So I don't know where you stand in politics, but I think the U.S. I know there's a lot of people from the U.S. here, but I know there's a lot of people from other places as well. But I guess the majority is from the U.S. I have so much respect for your country. Speaking now to my friends from the U.S., because you have many of the best scientists in the world. You have the best authors. You have many of the best musicians. Many of the best painters. You have done so much in terms of big science, like going to the moon, but I think you need to invest more in your people. And I think that's what's missing.
Along those same lines, this is kind of a question for your dad. I'd like to know what Orly was like as a little kid. And you know, you've spoken of your house being small, but with a lot of books. I'm sure he didn't grow up with an iPad or an iPhone glued to his face.
He was a young boy, and his sister and brother, they were telling stories. I and his mother were telling them stories, and every evening before going to sleep, he got some stories. And I was playing football one time a week at that age, and came home 10 o'clock in the evening, and then he was still awake, waiting for his father to tell him a story. So something of what he is doing is coming from me, but he has grown up reading and watching and listening to everything he can hear and make always the best thing out of it. And that project to get connection with you American astronauts, speaking to you Americans, is a brilliant idea, and they were very happy to visit Iceland again 15 years later. And he has done a movie about this, and this is a very good and interesting and important work to do this, to speak to these astronauts, and because US is going fast, and in 1 or 2 days they are doing a new thing, so you will hear this on your news next weeks and next month. Thank you.
It's my father's birthday today.
Okay.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Orly. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have had such a pleasure on this cruise with you all that I almost forgot that it was my birthday today. But you have reminded me now. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have time for 2-3 more questions.
Thank you. I would first say that I'm not surprised the astronauts wanted to come back. Iceland's been on our bucket list for a while. We've been all over the world, lived in multiple countries. We were expecting Iceland to be amazing, far exceeded our expectations. So I'm sure probably there's quite a few of us in here thinking, I'm not surprised the astronauts wanted to come back. I think a lot of people want to come back, so thank you for that. The other thing I would say is serendipity is always interesting. My wife and I knew about Eurovision. Don't know how many other people did, but we were aware of it. We knew about, obviously, that was our focus on it. We didn't know the Iceland connection or how passionate Icelanders were about it. And for anybody who hasn't seen it, I'll say the Sunday before we left for Iceland, we did not plan this. There's a US program, you may have seen 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes did a story on Iceland and Eurovision and how it's wrapped around the culture and they've embraced it. And it was all about this year's Eurovision and this amazing Icelandic singer. But it's a whole story about them competing for it, and the president of the country was on multiple times on the interviews talking about Iceland and Eurovision and why it's so important to them. We saw this the day before, literally a couple hours before we got on the airplane. And then all this happened, and New York tie-ins, and we couldn't believe it. But it gave us such an interesting context for that, which we didn't know was going to happen. So for anybody who hasn't been online to 60 Minutes, you can go on and you can download any of those shows. If you search for the episode on Iceland and Eurovision, it's really going to mean a lot more after all of this. So we love it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Some of you may have been to my first talk. Eurovision is not only this movie. The movie is about the song contest that has been going on for 65 years. And 66 years now, actually. And Europe has had its fair shares of wars. And after the Second World War, the leaders of Europe were looking for any way to bring the continent together. And one of the things that they came up with was to make a singing contest where each country every year would submit one song, and they would perform it each year in the country, in the venue of the country who had won it last year. So it's a contest that travels all over Europe, and it's just a wonderful thing to bring nations together. And what it does, they had a rule for a long time that you had to sing in your own language, and then they abolished that rule in 1974 and said you can sing in whatever language you want. And that year, ABBA came and sang Waterloo, and they're from Sweden, and won the contest, of course. But even though most of the songs now are performed in English, because that's sort of the language that everyone in Europe at least understands, there is always in the songs you can hear somehow sort of the background of the culture of each nation. And so it teaches, just listening to these songs teaches you a thing or two about all of the countries that are in Europe, and there are so many of them. I know many of you have traveled to Europe, and you know it's just a collection of many small countries with common heritage, but also vastly different histories. So it was a nice thing that they did this back then, and this tradition has continued ever since. And the reason why this movie got made was because Will Ferrell, his wife is from Sweden, and he started watching Eurovision when he was sometimes there, and found it interesting and wanted to make a comedy about singers from a small town in Iceland going to the big stage. So I encourage you, if you have time, just to go on YouTube and type best Eurovision songs, and you will have a whole catalog of music that you will enjoy. The closest Iceland has ever come to winning the Eurovision Song Contest was in 2020. All the like the website where they put the bets on, they all said like Iceland is going to win this year, and then it was cancelled. You never won it. Let's see. What time is it? Do we have time for more questions? Yes? 30. Oh, she asks about the elves. Do you know about the elves in Iceland?
No.
So, when you're driving on the roads of Iceland, you will sometimes see the road make a turn, and for seemingly no reason other than that there's some rock there, and then it turns back. And the reason why they do this is because there is quite a number of people who genuinely believe in elves, and they will tell the road authorities if they're going to go through some place where there is a population of elves. They say, no, you cannot go here, and they respect it, and that's remarkable for me.
I was there a few years ago, and a guy I just spoke to morning about Dion picked us up from the airport, and we were driving into Reykjavik, and just before you get into Reykjavik, he said, I can't remember the name, well there's this big tall building being built, and it was surrounded by sort of normal sized buildings. And I said, that's not very Icelandic. He said, no. He said, the elves won't be happy about this. Anyway, while we were there, it was officially opened, this building, but the day before, it set alight. And they said it was the elves that did it because they weren't happy. And that's it, on the street. He said, you know, and our friend Hansina, who ran a hotel, the Klima, on the Wellfield, she didn't do anything without consulting the elves. She was an international businesswoman. And I said to her, but how do you know? How do you know when they're unhappy? She said, well, you know. You definitely know. That's it.
That's very true. In this movie Eurovision, there are several scenes with elves, and some of them are set at this elf house, and this is not actually how people who see elves in Iceland. They don't see them in small houses; they see them in the rock. They live inside the rock. But in the movie, there's an elf house, and they shot that scene in Scotland because they get a better tax refund there. So they filmed that whole sequence in Scotland, and they filmed these elf scenes, all of the elf scenes with the house. They built it in Scotland and filmed it there because the production gets more money back from Scotland than it gets from the Icelandic government for filming it. So when people started to come to Húsavík because of this movie, all of them would be asking, where is the elf house? Where is the elf house? So we knew that something needed to be done. Everyone was looking for this house that didn't exist. So I got together a team and we built a brand new house. Because that's what we do. And we got from the film like the measurements of it, and it looks almost identical. But before doing that, I reached out to the local lady in town who speaks to the elves, and I asked her, is this okay? And she said, I will consult the elves. And then she said, they are happy. They are happy with this exposure. And I was like, I can understand that. So we don't have to build this house, but yeah. So I can relate to this story. And there's a problem I have, because now I've put up this house, and in the movie they are bringing liquor to the elves in the house, and cookies. And so many kids come to look at this house, so I need every night, either myself or I have to send someone to take out these tiny liquor bottles, because we don't want kids to find them the next day. I have a whole cabinet of them right now. So drinks are me if you come to Húsavík. I'm gonna do two more, and then it's done. But it's been a pleasure. Yes?
My husband and I did actually rent a car and travel around Iceland for 10 days, and it exceeded our expectations. But I'm wondering, everywhere we went were large crowds of tourists. Is that a concern to the government? Can Iceland sustain that tourism?
The same day when I boarded, and me and my father boarded this cruise ship, actually in the car driving down to the harbor in Reykjavik. They were on the radio, a program, and they were talking about Greenland feeling overcrowded because they are only 56,000 and they are getting so many of these cruises. And I thought it was interesting because I was going on a cruise and going to Greenland for the first time. We have in Iceland a population of 360,000 something, so we are a little bit bigger than Greenland, and we have more land that is easily accessible because we have a road that leads the whole ring around the island, whereas in the town we went to in Greenland probably doesn't have any road to another place because you just can't build roads on this island, but we do. What has been the main problem in Iceland is that we have one airport. It sits all the way on one end of the island, near Reykjavik, the capital, and so many people come flying there. They spend 3-4 days, and they go no more than I don't know, 100 miles away from Reykjavik at all. So they stay pretty close to, no, sorry, 50 miles I was going to say. I was making the calculation in my head. We have a lot of land with interesting places where we have very few people. And I think what the government of Iceland needs to focus on more in the next years is how to get people to travel more around the country so it's spread out. I don't think we have an we don't have over tourism if we use the land properly. Do you know what I mean? Okay. Last one. Nobody wants to go last?
I know before you were talking about liquor. What was beer recently became full strength beer in '89 became legal? What was that event like or that day like? And was that something you enjoyed as a young man back then?
You have read up on your Icelandic history, I can hear. Iceland banned beer from 1918 to 1989. Beer was not allowed in the country, and they call this a beer day, obviously, and it's celebrated in pubs all over Iceland because that was the day when beer became legal. I was too young to be a part of this, but it was such a big thing for all the bars that this would happen that they said, still to this day they tell the story of this day. And
You have very strict drunk driving laws, I know. So
well, yeah, very strict driving laws. People
they don't go together.
So it's been.
Not a question, just a comment. Orly, your enthusiasm is infectious. It's made the trip very special. Thank you. Thank you.
Me and my wife are such a big team. She is rather shy, so she doesn't like all the attention. But because there is always a great, if there's a man doing good things, there is always a good woman usually behind him, and vice versa. And I want you to know that none of this that I've been doing, I could have done without my wife. But thank you for these kind words.
We have to run. We'll catch up with you later on.
See you. Thank you for today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
What an accomplishment.
Thank you very much. And you your passenger here aboard have been very, very kind to him and speaking well of him and liked his and clapped for him. So he is in the best place in the world at this moment.
Absolutely. I'm sure your heart was swelling.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Do you or does he have a business card?
No, we are what?
I have his email.
Oh, good. You
Because
can.
I want to talk to a college professor and see if they're able to bring him in.
Okay.
I think he'd be just amazing.
Okay.
I'm so proud. You must feel so proud.
I am.
I'm so happy.
I am. Thank you very much.
Okay, if you could take a picture. This is the update on Artemis. It's tomorrow's launch. It starts at 8:30. 2-hour window starts at 8:33 a.m. Monday tomorrow. You know, in the U.S. And that's the website that I get these emails from because I live in Brevard County. And if to, or do you want to move this, or I don't know. I'm not good at any of this.
I can.